Good morning to all of you. I have a great pleasure in welcoming you all once again on Mehta and Mehta's weekly knowledge sharing program. As you are all aware, last week we started with the Risk Management Committee, and today we are going to be discussing on Nomination and Remuneration Committee. And in forthcoming weeks, we'll be taking up the further committees also. And today we actually have a panelist who's Pragya Kal. She is not new to us. She was there earlier also in our program. Many of you may be aware. She is actually a seasoned governance professional who is having a multi-field experience over 2 decades of years in a diverse experience on the various regulatory compliances, governance issues, secretarial functions, in many of the leading industries in India. In fact, throughout the career, she has been associated with the various companies like Urega Forbes, Crompton Greaves, and Bajaj Group of Company. And she has been addressing many webinars and sharing the knowledge for the interest of the professional. Currently, she is actually serving as a company secretary and a compliance officer with United Spirits Limited. And we definitely look forward to hear from her with her practical experiences, etc. Another thing and all in today's important topic. Coming to the topic, I don't want to take much of our time because I will leave it to the panelists to talk on the topic, and also our in-house expert Sudhagar, as you are all aware, he will take it. But nevertheless, I will only touch upon after the 2013 LODR regulation has come into the NRC committee's role and responsibilities are greatly enhanced today. And basically, although NRC has been assigned many roles, but prima facie, there are 4 new roles which has been primarily identified with now. One is the appointment, the reappointment of the directors and the recommendation to the board for inducting. That is one. There actually, if you see the LODR, it says that they'll have to do the skill matrix and they'll have to find out the suitability and what is needed for the industry, etc. I am actually recalled one of the quote of Anand Mahindra Group. Get the people who can add value for your organization. That is exactly the NRC committee is actually trying to find out when they are making the recommendation. That is number one. Number two is on the recommendation made. It is not only the recommendation, it is also recommending the suitable remuneration having regard to the industry, talent, etc. The other thing and all, that is another thing. The third important thing is the performance evaluations. And then very importantly, it is the succession planning. These are the 4 major areas besides other things NRC is actually functioning. And the only thing is, the question may arise whether NRC is actually the true sense is actually contributing to the corporate governance. That is the very big issue actually. In fact, if you all recall, I think in the year 2022, there was a High Court case which was actually discussed elaborately in between the C Telefilm and the Invesco companies actually. This case, you are all maybe aware because it's all emanated from the proxy advisory firm's recommendations, where they actually wanted to remove the existing CEO and the managing director of the company. They want to induct the new 6 independent directors on the board by calling the EGM. This matter was actually challenged. It went to the court and it was actually discussed. One of the things which brought out by the court was the argument which came actually. These all the recommendations are not passed through the NRC committee, etc. That was one of the things which was actually brought out. But the High Court actually said that the shareholders' right of appointing the director cannot be overridden by the NRC committee. Though the NRC committee has not given the recommendation, it is not the shareholders cannot appoint the people. That sort of a thing which actually came out. But in the light of that, mostly we are all aware, almost about more than 75% of the companies in India are actually promoter-driven company. Whatever the big companies today, what we are talking, these are all started with the family company. Today we are marching towards the corporate governance, etc., fulfilling, but still, it is like that. In the light of that, when it comes to the appointment, remuneration, etc., and other thing and all, how far the NRC committee's contribution is actually towards the corporate governance, the true sense is again debatable one. But nevertheless, In the case of the listed company, NRC has been doing an excellent role, and we go through the various reports, etc., and other things which shows. And today's topic, I think I will look forward to hear from both the experts today on this. And of course, our presenter will actually take us through the various provision on a Companies Act as well as the LODR regulations with reference to some of the decided cases also she will be touching upon. As usual, I request all the participants to put their queries on the chat box. We'll be taking it periodically, whatever the queries which are coming, we'll seek from the experts' opinion on this. We'll try our level best to provide the inputs. And if the time permits at the end of the presentation, people who want to still ask some question, they can raise their hand. We will be first to Pragya to stop. Thank you. Over to Pragya, please.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here always. I have come here often as a speaker and as an attendee also, and all the sessions have been very enlightening. The topic that has been chosen today, that is NRC, is an interesting topic, and professionals who have actually worked under both the erstwhile Companies Act 56, erstwhile listing agreement, and the current LODR 15 and Companies Act 2013 would very clearly be able to understand how the roles of various committees has evolved and changed during this time period, particularly with respect to NRC, because it has been mandated for certain class of companies under the Companies Act 13 and LODR 15. Just to talk, as Mr. Balakrishnan also said, the Nomination and Remuneration Committee, it plays a very important role in guiding the management in selecting the right candidate, in appointing, evaluating the balance of skills, ensuring the proper fit of that candidate, setting the performance standards, designing the pay structure, which should be a proper combination of fixed and variable components, overseeing succession planning, and at the same time ensuring that governance doesn't suffer. So this is an interesting topic, and we all will learn during the course of our discussion today. With this, I hand over to the team. Thank you.
Over to Sudhagar.
Thank you, Balu. Good morning, everyone. And in fact, yesterday night, coincidentally, it so happened that I was discussing with somebody about the role of NRC, Nomination and Remuneration Committee. And also in the light of the fiasco of Indigo, what is happening? We all are aware that for the last 3 days, the kind of mayhem which has taken place because of the cancellation of Indigo flights, the amount of suffering what the passengers and the customers are undergoing, and the Indigo has a scant respect, and they have not shown any kind of remedial measures. They have not announced it, at least whether they have taken it or not, we don't know, but they have not announced it anything as such by giving a comfort to the passengers. And there were so horrifying stories are there about Indigo. In fact, one of that is in my own family. My niece has gone from Hyderabad to Chennai for stamping of her visa. She came from US and she left 10-month-old twins, presuming that she will go in the morning and will come back by evening. And during this time, my sister will take care of the kids. And she got stuck at the airport for 36 hours. With a great difficulty, she could come back. See the psychological trauma and the physical trauma, what she would have undergone, both the ladies. And so many stories are there like this. If you see the board of Indigo, we have the independent directors, virtually who are there. The past SEBI chairman, Mr. Damodaran, was there. The past Sherpa of G20, Mr. Amitabh Kant, was there. There are several other luminaries who are there on the board. Unfortunately, there is no statement from any of them, and no comment, nothing is there. Okay. And people were suffering for the last 3-4 days, and in the media, they were all shouting at the highest pitch, whatever it is there at all. I was just wondering, what is the role of NRC? No doubt about it, board has a very key role to play. And independent directors too have a key role to play in this, but what is the role of NRC? In fact, one of my friends, when I was talking about NRC role, I just mentioned to him that tomorrow we have a webinar. And then I was started discussing about NRC, the failure of NRC in the Indigo episode. Then he said how NRC is connected to that. NRC is certainly connected to that because one of the criteria for independence of the independent directors is to be formulated by Nomination and Remuneration Committee. And when the independent directors are keeping quiet, not having the speaking culture, who is to be blamed for that? We don't know. I'm just giving some thoughts only without any kind of malice. We are just professionally discussing whatever had happened. The second issue is that the NRC may be assigned the board evaluation responsibility for this financial year. How they are going to evaluate the directors? Let us see that. What sort of scoring they are going to give? Whoever is going to evaluate the independent directors or the other directors, the boards, the committees, we have to see that. Thirdly, that the performance of the management, the CEO as well as in all the other senior functionals who are responsible for this, and the NRC's responsibility is to devise the remuneration policy. In the remuneration policy, whether this kind of crisis management handling is to be demarcated or not. By merely devising a pay scale is not sufficient. See, when this kind of crisis, whenever it happens, as professionals, we need to understand, we need to discuss, deliberate that every committee, what sort of role it has to perform. According to me, in this Indigo episode, audit committee has a role to play, NRC has a role to play, RMC committee has a role to play, even stakeholder relationship committee has a role to play. Though 178 might be confining that so and so security holders, if you have to do that, and the role of SRC as per schedule 2 of LODR is confined only to security holders. They don't need to take care of stakeholders. That doesn't mean they don't rise to the occasion. So if nobody is taking the responsibility, suppose audit committee is quiet, NRC is quiet, SRC is quiet, RMC is quiet, then who will take the responsibility for this? At the top level, one has to do. When we talk about governance, we always say that it should percolate from top to bottom. But where is the top? These are few issues I thought that I will just mention about it. And so that we may discuss it maybe in future. Because as a professionals, we should not just discuss this governance and all, whatever is there in that, what's called, in the books or whatever we hear. In fact, several years before, whenever these episodes of Tata's, Infosys, all this had happened, Satyam, so many things, I said that openly. I wonder that whether corporate governance is confined to conference rooms. This is another latest episode that sometimes really I feel ashamed of talking about corporate governance. Are we really, whenever this kind of crisis happens, if we are not able to handle the crisis, where is the governance? Where are the governance models, governance structures, risk management committee? So anyway, I give a pass here and we can talk till the cows come home about these kind of episodes. But I thought just let me put some of my thoughts so that we don't need to discuss all the things here, but you may do it at some other forums wherever we met. We may be able to discuss that. But as professionals, definitely we need to think about these things. Suppose if I am going to be a director on this board, how I would have performed? What are my lessons? What is my value addition? Whenever these kind of, I said this thing several times, I'm telling today also, whenever these kind of episodes happen, especially whenever I teach in IOD and other places to the directors, I always say that Satyam and Tata's and Infosys, these are the case studies which one has to read it very carefully, not for the gossip. What we need to do is, at the end of the day, what are the learnings from this which I need to have? When I'm sitting in the boardroom and wearing a hat of an independent director, how I have to conduct myself? If the situation so arises, whether I will lay down my resignation or simply put a resignation letter, or I will try to do something. If I will try to do something, what is that I am going to do it? These are the few things which we have to do it. Thanks, Bala. I'm hand over back to you. Maybe just when I start her presentation. Thanks.
Sudhakar, actually, you well said. One question is, how far independent directors are really independent? That is the question. In fact, my 4 decades of experience, especially in the last leg of my experience, having worked with the unlisted public companies, I have virtually seen the independent directors in some of the companies were only namesake because law required them. Because the executive director, they think, oh, what do you know about the business? Nothing. You come for the meeting, you attend the meeting, you collect your sitting fees, etc. That is the thing. Even the important documents are actually tabled at the board meeting itself directly, and the decisions are taken. That is one. And second thing, there is again, what you call a sort of bypassing the rules. Deliberately call for the shorter meeting where they know independent director will not be able to attend. And only thing is, okay, the ratification issue, one of the directors, etc., and all those things. That also I have actually seen in the last 5-6 years when I worked with the listed public companies. So that is why I said in the beginning, how far NRC is very effective, especially in the light of the 75% more of the promoter-driven companies are actually there in our country. And also I cited that the case which actually came out as Steel Telephone. I think you also taken some of the forum about the proxy advisory firms, etc. You brought out this issue also. I remember this. So this is the question actually comes. I think we will discuss today. We will hear, but anyway, as you rightly said, we will keep aside this current topic of Indigo. We won't get into the details. Although there's a lessons are to be learned. I stop here. I will ask actually to move towards the presentation. Okay.
Very good morning to all, and it gives me immense pleasure to present in front of our esteemed panelists and our participants. Thank you so much for joining in. And the critical topic for today's discussion, like was highlighted in the introductory given by the panelists, is the Nomination and Remuneration Committee. So just to give you a view on what we're going to discuss today is, we're going to talk about the history of how the concept of NRC has evolved over a period of time, the regulatory provisions, which covers the provisions under the Companies Act as well as the LODR regulations. And last, we're going to move to certain case studies related to highlighting the role of the NRC as well as in case of contravention of the provisions. So, tracing the historic evolution of the concept of Nomination and Remuneration Committee. So pre-2000s, the concept was largely absent and the remuneration of the directors was decided by the board or by the shareholders. So there was no discrete concept of having an NRC. Till the year 2002 or 2003, which is in Naresh Chandra and Narayan Murthy committees. These are the two committees that talked about voluntary remuneration committees being established by the boards. Finally, when the 2013 Companies Act 2013 was introduced, it was the first time that the Nomination and Remuneration Committee was made mandatory to a certain class of companies. And it was a new concept introduced under the 2013 Act. Later on in the SEBI LODR regulations 2015, they've introduced stricter norms for listed entities related to NRC. So this is the mapping of the evolution of the concept of Nomination and Remuneration Committee. To discuss on the applicability under the Companies Act, Section 178 subsection 1 mandates the constitution of NRC for certain classes of companies, which includes all listed companies as well as certain class of unlisted public companies as well, which is if the paid up share capital is equal to or more than 10 crores or turnover is equal to or more than rupees 100 crores or the outstanding loans or deposits are more than or equal to 50 crores. In such cases, even unlisted public companies are mandatorily required to constitute a Nomination and Remuneration Committee. Private companies are generally exempt unless they are subsidiaries of public companies and they meet either of these three criteria related to paid up capital, turnover, and outstanding loans or deposits. Or in certain cases, if the private company is governed by specific regulatory requirements and that requires the constitution of this committee, then those specific provisions will have to be looked into for the applicability. Further, Section 8 companies, IFSC public companies are exempt from the requirements of Section 178 for Constitution of NRC. And in case of government companies, Section 178 is selectively applicable only in respect of the appointment of senior management and other employees in such government companies.
So I would just like to add here. So MCA has exempted certain class of unlisted public companies from appointment of independent directors. In that case, since the principal section 149 does not ask these companies to have independent directors, they would not be required to have NRC. However, if these companies are governed by some other regulators also, like your NHB or your RBI, then, and if those regulations require them to have NRC, then they would be required to have NRC.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. Because whenever you have a company, a private company doing a non-banking financial companies, when they obtain the license from the RBI Master Circular very categorically says you need to have the NRC committee, you need to have the audit committee, you need to have the risk management committee. But however, the Master Circular also says these are all automatically governed under the provision of the Companies Act, that is Section 177, 178. So that is what the sectoral regulation, whenever it's called for, yes, it is right. Well said. Yes, go ahead, Jaswin.
So relating to the provisions relating to the composition of NRC committee under the Companies Act, Section 178 subsection 1 mandates the constitution and states the norms for constitution of the NRC. So the composition of the committee, which is the NRC, would be, it should have at least 3 directors. All of them shall be non-executive directors, and at least half of them shall be independent directors. These are the requirements under Companies Act. Further, the proviso goes on to state that the chairperson of the company, whether executive or non-executive, may be a member of the NRC but cannot be the chairperson of the NRC committee.
Yeah, one minute.
Yes, sir.
See, that several people ask this question that, as Jaswin has rightly mentioned, that this particular committee shall have only non-executive directors as members. At the same point of time, the chairperson of the company, he may be an executive or non-executive, but he can be a member of the committee, but cannot hold the chair. So this is a contradiction. There is no question of contradiction as such. What the section says was that it has provided that all the members are to be non-executive directors and majority are to be, I think, to be independent directors. And majority are 50%, whatever, I don't remember exactly, but it has to be some independent directors. And then there is a carve-out has been provided that in case of the chairman of the company, who may be a non-executive or an executive, he can be a member of the committee. What was the reason for this? If you see that in 2008, when this company's bill for the first time it was drafted and kept for that public testing, that point of time this carve-out was not there. It was initially there that all the committee members are to be non-executive directors. Okay. Then the question comes, if they are non-executive director, there is no executive director at all on the NRC committee. And they are the people who are devising the remuneration policy, who are devising the compensation for the executives. And they have no clue about how the organization is functioning. So there should be somebody who is from the executive side also to be there on this particular committee. So maybe in their wisdom, they thought that chairman is the right person to be there. The chairman may be independent director, he may be an executive role, he may be a non-executive role. But chairman is expected to have an overall idea about the entire organization in depth. That is what is expected. Whether he has that or not, that that is immaterial. But a chairman of the organization is supposed to know each and everything. So that they thought that let the chairman be there in the NRC committee. And if he is going to be there, even if he is holding an executive position also, he may be a promoter chairman or he may be a non-promoter chairman, he may be an executive chairman, maybe non-executive chairman, but chairman can be a member of the NRC. Then they might have thought again, discussed and deliberated that let him not be holding the chair of the NRC at least. Let us have that sanctity of that committee be there. Let an independent director be holding that chair. This is the reason for this thing.
So the role to be played by this NRC committee as per the Companies Act. So the Companies Act very specifically states out the scope and the function to be performed by the NRC. First is to identify the person qualified to become a director or senior management and recommend to the board their appointment and removal. Second is to specify the manner for effective evaluation of the performance of the board, its committees, and individual directors to be carried out either by the board, by the NRC, or even by an independent external agency, and to review its implementation and compliances as per the recommendation that is provided in the evaluation, performance evaluation of the board. Third is to formulate the criteria for determining qualifications, positive attributes, and independence of the director, and recommend to the board a policy that has to be in place regarding the remuneration of the directors, KMPs, and other employees.
Yeah. Here also, you see that, well, 1 minute, just go back.
Yes.
So here also what happens is when the NRC committee is formulating the criteria for independent directors, they should not repeat that section 149(6), whatever the criteria is there, or the listing regulations, what is there. What exactly they have to look at that, apart from that legal framework, they have to also see the ethics, values, culture of the organization. Because every corporate has its own culture, its own values. So they have to see that whether the independent directors will be fit into that or not. Because that should be also a part of the criteria for the appointment of independent directors. In addition to that whenever you are appointing an independent director, whenever NRC is recommending an independent director to the board, they have to have proper what's called as the due diligence of the person concerned. What was his background? No doubt about it, they say qualifications, experience, maturity, all these things. Over and above that, what? Because this more or less everybody, whoever is aspiring to become independent director of the company might be having all these things. They might be having good qualifications, they might be having experience, they might be having maturity, they might be established credentials in the corporate sector. But over and above that, what? Over and above that, his mannerisms, his temperament, his ability to, his compatibility with other directors. These are certain things which NRC has to look into. So the tick box exercise is not supposed to be done by the NRC. It is a very pious role what NRC has to discharge. So whoever is holding the chair of the NRC, whoever are becoming the members of the NRC committee, have to have this kind of thinking always. Over and above that, the skill sets what is required. As we know that all listed company has to map the skill sets required by the directors, and that skill sets ought to be also mapped which director is holding which skill set required by the organization, and that is to be published in the annual report as per the listing regulations. So it is also the responsibility of the NRC to determine what sort of skill sets that organization requires. First and foremost thing. After that, they have to see that the existing board, whether they are able to meet, are able to have that skill sets. If they are not having, then they have to see the appointment of another independent director or independent directors. And one of the parameters for that selection or recommendation going to be is that skill sets what they require. Similarly, as and when any resignation or the retirement or completion of the term of the independent directors is taking place, the induction of the new director, the appointment of a new director should be of the same skill sets what that person is processing it. Because if they bring somebody else with different skill sets, now who will this gap will be filled by who? That is also to be seen.
Thank you, sir. So the Companies
I would
Act.
just like to add here, Jaswin, little bit
Yes, ma'am.
building upon what Mr. Sudhakar said. Of course, the NRC, while selecting the candidate, plays a very important role. It actually really, in good, good governed companies, they actually prepare a skill set of what is available with the company and what they need. Like, since I have worked across different organizations, so I can actually relate to what he was saying. We realized that we had people who had technical capabilities. Then we realized we need somebody from marketing background, right? Somebody who could assist us in marketing and somebody who could help us with HR related things. But as he said, when you analyze, you go to consultants, there are big external search firms like your Aegon, Zender and others. They will give the candidate to you, but NRC has to actually objectively think, because NRC interacts with the entire board and they are very privy to how the management is. So they should also see that the candidate they are bringing in is a good cultural fit also and should not be creating bottlenecks and should be able to put for their points, but while taking everyone along. And also should not be like that who will just be a yes man for the management, right? So this is very important that they look at such a sort of candidate and not only go with what external search firms have said. That's a role that is expected out of them, that they will further analyze, right? And on the compensation part also, when anybody is hired as an executive director, as a CEO, while fixing up the remuneration, they have to strike a balance between the fixed and the variable portion, because the variable portion should be linked to certain performance metrics and their achievement. Because when these proposals recommended by NRC go to the shareholders, the proxy firms are scrutinizing everything. They actually see whether the performance criteria are actually properly enumerated in the resolutions. So NRC has to be very well cognizant of this fact, and while fixing up the structure, while giving their recommendation, should actually be very careful about these things. I think that's all from my side for now on this.
Well said, Pragya. In fact, I was working one of the listed company over 20 years or something like that, where we had actually what you said, linking the variable type of the payments to the performance related thing. Absolutely. This company has always had a plan every year, setting up the what you call key role area for the directors and as well as the senior executives, which is to actually go through the NRC committee. NRC committee will actually analyze and agree and fix up the norms, and it is actually approved before the year starts. It is communicated to the people in the beginning of the year. Look here, these are the KRAs, this is what it is. You will be actually continuously monitored with reference to your key performance indicator. Your variable pay will depend upon that, subject to achievement of this. That used to be the case, as rightly you said. It is a very well set one, because nowadays everything is related to performance related. And more so, it is a proxy advisory also looking into the things, and they are bringing out many issues from that perspective of it also. Nowadays, the board proactively thinking of taking the better decision, quality decision in the light of what is the proxy advisor will look into. That is another thing which is happening actually today, most of the listed companies. Well said, actually.
Absolutely, sir. In fact, what companies are doing now these days is, when they take a proposal to the shareholders, before that they actually go through the proxy advisory guidelines, and they also see the recent resolutions of the similar kinds, whether they were rejected, whether they were approved, and then accordingly the resolutions are drafting. And I think that's a good thing for us as company secretaries also. When we draft, when we advise our management, it's good for us. It's a guiding factor for us to educate our management and the board also, that we need to actually call out these things, because many a times management is not comfortable. When I say management, I mean the board members. So when you take the REM and you tell them that in the explanatory statement, I want to disclose all this, then they would say, why? Just say fixed is this, variable is this much, that's all. Then we have to actually educate them that we have to actually call out that their performance metrics are based on turnover, total shareholder value. All of that thing needs to be advised to your management. and then only maybe it can go to your shareholders. And when all of these things are actually brought out clearly in your shareholders resolution, then it becomes easy for your proposals to get through.
Yeah, just wait. Go through.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. So certain criteria placed by the Companies Act, wherein which can be considered by the NRC while drafting a policy related to remuneration. So NRC, while formulating the policy, shall ensure that the level and composition of the remuneration is reasonable and sufficient to attract, retain, and motivate the directors and ensure quality to run the company successfully. The relationship of the remuneration to the performance is clear and meets appropriate performance benchmark, which is a point that was already highlighted by one of our panelists, stating that remuneration should be linked to performance benchmarks. And remuneration to directors, key managerial personnel, and senior management involves a balance between fixed and incentive pay, reflecting short and long-term performances, and working on the goals of the company. Further, the Companies Act requires this policy to be clearly placed on the website of the company, and the salient features of the policy and changes, if any, along with the web address of the policy, should also be disclosed as a part of the board report. For the purpose of Section 178, Companies Act states that the expression senior management shall be defined as a personnel of the company who are members of its core management team, excluding the board of directors, comprising all members of the management who are one level below the executive directors, including the functional heads. So the NRC is required to frame the remuneration policy for all of them as well, forming a part of the senior management.
It's very important to note here when we talk about SMP's remuneration, as it was highlighted by Mr. Bala also and Mr. Sadakar also, that at the beginning of the year, the targets for SMPs are fixed, which are also aligned with the NRC member. And at the end of the year, the review happens. And it actually happens in professionally managed companies that the performance is tagged and tracked with the targets fixed. It's important that the NRC chairman or the NRC is in, I would say, constant or continuously interact with the CHRO also, so that it should not happen that at the end of the year there are surprises. So it's good for NRC person to work closely with the CHRO.
Thank you, ma'am, for that input. Now moving on to SEBI LODR regulations, and more particularly Regulation 19, which talks about the composition of certain criteria of the NRC. So, of course, the LODR regulations is applicable for listed companies, and how are the listed entities required to constitute their NRC. So the NRC shall have minimum of 3 directors, all of them shall be non-executive directors. The LODR requires at least 2/3 of the directors to be independent directors. That's a variation from the Companies Act requirement, wherein LODR has a stricter norm. The chairperson of the NRC is mandatorily required to be an independent director, and there is a specific carve out, like in the Companies Act as well, in the LODR, which states that the chairperson of the company, whether executive or non-executive, may be appointed as the member of NRC, but cannot be the chairman or the chairperson of the NRC. Moving on to the requirements of meetings and quorum, under the SEBI LODR regulations, the NRC committee shall meet at least once in a financial year. The quorum requirements shall be 2 members or 1/3 of the members of the committee, whichever is greater. And NRC must always have at least 1 independent director in attendance. Moving on to the specific role of the NRC, which has been very detailed, laid down under Schedule 2 Part D of the SEBI LODR regulations. which states that the role of the NRC shall be to formulate the criteria for determining the qualifications, positive attributes, and independence of directors, and recommend to the board a policy relating to the remuneration of such directors, KMP, and other employees. For independent directors, NRC shall evaluate the balance of skills, knowledge, and experience that they bring to the board. And on the basis of such evaluation, shall prepare a description of the roles and the capabilities required for an independent director. The person recommended to the board for the appointment as an independent director shall have the capabilities identified in the description. And for the purpose of identifying suitable candidates in respect of independent directors, the committee may use the service of an external agency, consider candidates from a wider range of backgrounds, having due regard to diversity, and consider the time commitments of the candidates that they will be able to give to the board.
So the recommendations of NRC, when it goes to the shareholders, invites a lot of scrutiny from proxy advisory firms. It is one of the committees that is closely watched by your proxy advisory firms. And if we see recently and during COVID days, whenever there was a remuneration proposal, increase in remuneration proposal of an executive directors, many a times proxy advisory firms had opposed it, and many of those resolutions were defeated during those time periods. So NRC is a very important committee, one of the important committee that is watched by proxy advisory firms, and actually it helps now to know the proxy advisory firms guidelines and to draft your documents basis that.
Well said, Pragya. When you actually talked about this COVID time and other thing and all, I also remember it has happened with the Eicher motor where that Siddharth Lawrence pay hike was just to be put. It was actually defeated by the shareholders. They have to again reschedule, recast and other thing and all. That is what has happened. Similarly, it has happened with one of the Bajaj, I think, Tempo, I think, which is the force motor, I think. I think Ajay Firodia or something like that. His salary, same issue has happened. Even the C telefilms, even the popular Ekta Kapoor and Shobha Kapoor, they also could not get their approval actually done for the increase. As really said, many times it has happened like that. And one more very important thing is they are also concerned about the cost. Because I remember in one of the company called Lupin, at the COVID time, they proposed a very high ESOP actually around the COVID time. It was actually defeated like anything with the majority of the shareholder. I think more than about 80% of the institutional shareholder, they voted against them, saying this is not the time for spending the money. It is the time actually a cost saving activity. These are all can wait. So it was actually rejected. As you rightly say, proxy advisory firms are wonderfully playing the role. And today, increasingly, companies before taking a decision, they are very cautious how it will be looked into, how it will be viewed by the proxy advisory. All the things are all definitely thought over it well in the board meeting and NRC meeting, etc. Well said, actually. Yeah.
And this also reminds me, there was an amendment after this in the LODR regarding if some director's appointment was rejected by the shareholders, then there's a certain time period within which they have to do, and it has to directly be done by the shareholders. There was some amendment which was a fallout of these rejections by the proxy advisory firm. So shareholder activism has gained light because of these proxy advisory firms. And of course, it is enabling people take informed decisions regarding the companies they invest in.
Yeah, you're right. In the past, it has actually happened when the shareholder reject the director's appointment, the board appoint them as additional director, subsequently the same person.
Exactly.
So I think to nullify that only, probably this amendment has come. I think Sudhakar could add on this, really speaking.
Yeah.
Yes, Sudhakar, your views, please.
Yeah, see that, according to me, we don't need to worry about the shareholder activism or the proxy advisory activism. It's always good to have checks and balances. But suppose if the proxy advisor is advising his clients to vote against the resolution proposed by the company, or the shareholders have defeated that resolution means it is a slap on the face of the NRC. That way they have not done their homework properly. See, proxy advisories, before they advise their clients, they always give an opportunity to the company that we have certain objections. Please clarify these things. So while giving the clarifications, if the NRC is not able to convince the proxy advisories, that means what? They are doing something wrong and their conscience is not clear itself. Otherwise, they would have been able to convince the shareholders definitely by giving transparent information in the explanatory statement. If the opaqueness is there, definitely there will be a kind of a smog in the minds of the both proxy advisories as well as the shareholders. So the learnings out of this, whenever it happens like for any company, as company secretaries, what we need to do is, see, as a company secretary, we have an obligation, a right also to advise the NRCs. We don't need to say that they are superior and I am inferior. It is not so. So, as a compliance officer, it is our responsibility and obligation to inform the NRC committee as well as the NRC chairman that what is the viewpoint of the proxy advisories, what is the viewpoint of the shareholders, and what this kind of debacles have taken place in the corporate sector. They have to furnish all those things before the NRC. At the same point of time, he has also to understand, suppose, say, for example, whether the compliance officer himself is having certain doubts in his mind, the kind of recommendations what NRC has given to the board with regard to the pay hike of the KMPs or your executive directors or whoever it may be, or even the compensation to the independent directors. So this needs a proper, thorough discussion before they are recommending it to the board. At the same point of time, at the board level also, further discussions have to take place on the recommendations given by NRC. Board should not take it as a gospel truth and then simply push it to the shareholders. I'm sure that it don't happen like that. But these kind of debacles, whatever they have taken place, we need to keep a watch on that as compliance officers, and we need to understand that what led to that particular thing, what is the reason for that thing, that one need to understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, Jaswin, go. Good.
Yeah. Thank you. Highlighting further on the rules of the NRC as per SEBI LODR, in addition to what our panelists also stated, the NRC shall formulate a criteria for evaluating the performance of the independent directors and the board. We're going to further elaborate through the course of this presentation more on the role of the NRC in evaluation of performance. Devising a policy on diversity of board of directors, and diversity in all meaning gender diversity, diversity of skill sets, etc. Identify persons who are qualified to become a director or senior management in accordance with the criteria prescribed, and recommend to the board regarding the appointment or removal of any of the directors as well. Whether to extend or continue the term of appointment of the independent director on the basis of the report of the performance evaluation of the particular independent director. Recommend to the board all remuneration in whatever form payable to the senior management. Now we shall discuss more elaborately on the role of the NRC in board evaluation. This is in accordance with the SEBI circular dated January 5, 2017 that highlighted how should a company carry out, listed company carry out the evaluation of the board and its performance. So evaluation of the board shall be as a whole of the independent directors, including the separate evaluation of the chairperson and independent directors, and various committees of the board and their functions. The role of the NRC in this entire exercise of board evaluation is very prominent because they formulate the criteria for evaluation of performance of the independent directors and the entire board, enable in carrying out this evaluation of the individual director's performance, And on the basis of the results of these evaluation, they determine whether to extend or continue the term of the independent directors, or even to analyze the performance of individual directors on the basis of this. The disclosure requirements for board evaluation is the manner in which the formal annual evaluation has been made by the board of the performance, and as well as the committees and individual directors shall be included as a part of the report by the board of directors, which is placed in the general meeting before the shareholders. Performance evaluation criteria for independent directors shall be disclosed in the section on corporate governance as a part of the annual report of the listed companies. Certain referencing related to the criteria for evaluation that has been highlighted under the SEBI circular is, so for the performance evaluation of the board as a whole, the NRC has to ensure, or the carrying out of this evaluation has to ensure that they take into account the structure of the board, the competency, experience, diversity available of the board members, including skill sets, the meetings of the board, which includes the regularity, frequency, participation of each director and individual and independent director during the board meeting, circulation of agendas, maintenance of recordings related to the board meetings, functions of the board and the management relationship, which is what is the independence that is provided between the board and the management, the feedback mechanism to that the board provides to the management, and whether the management provides sufficient information to the board for taking of any decisions. Second is the criteria to be kept in mind while evaluating the performance of the committees of the board. It shall be ensured that the mandate and composition of the individual committees must be kept in mind. The effectiveness of the committee and the quality of their recommendation to the board and the discussions carried out during the committee meetings shall be evaluated. The structure and the setup of the committee, including the effectiveness of the chairperson of individual committees, shall be evaluated, and the independence of these committees from the board and management shall also be kept in mind while carrying out the evaluation.
I'll just
The criteria. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Maybe you can go to the next slide, because I think you are covering that in the next slide. I saw that. Yeah. So here, before you start, maybe I would just like to add, because I found it very useful in my career. So when you evaluate individual directors, it's a peer evaluation, right? Each director evaluates the other director. It's good to have self-evaluation also. The director, when they are evaluating others, they should also evaluate themselves. So that that person also knows when he's evaluating others, how is his performance, how is he working. So that's a very good thing to put. And good governed companies actually include that.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that input. So coming to the criteria of evaluation of individual directors.
Just I want to
yes.
add one point to what Pragya said. It's in fact a good point. When I was in Reliance, we used to have this self-evaluation also as a part of board evaluation. In fact, I remember that at one point of time in one of the subsidiary companies board where I was there, even my independent directors and the remaining directors have given me a scoring of about 96, 97, whereas I myself have given to me 85%, 85, 86%. The reason being, why I say that at that point of time, I have been asked by others, by that, how it has come, something like that. Though, of course, it is a very confidential exercise as such. So they just said, why the score has come down so low. Because I said that this is how exactly I have to do it. When I analyze myself, being a professional and understanding the purpose of the board evaluation, I myself has given low score to me because I don't know about the business that much, which I am supposed to know it. Okay, and similarly, as a committee member, several times this question has come up also. In fact, being undergone that particular process, last year when we have one assignment which we have handled for a board evaluation, though that point of time I have asked the what's called as the chairs of the committees as well as the committee members that whether they know the role what they have to play as a member of that particular committee or as a chair of that particular committee. Very surprisingly, they have no clue about that. The terms of reference and all are penned very beautifully, but nobody has explained to them what exactly they have to do it. They say when we receive the agenda, we discuss that and some decisions are taking place, but we don't know exactly what is the role. In fact, this preempts me to say that though under the listing regulations, we are obligated to have the induction program for the directors and in particular independent directors. At the same point of time, we need to have also train the directors and we also have to publish the amount of hours they have spent on that training purpose in the annual reports. But the act is silent as far as the induction of the committees are concerned, induction of the members of the committees into the respective committees and about the training aspects. So my advice to all the participants, because I have been told some independent directors are also there in this particular webinar. So my advice to all of them is that please ensure that, please ask wherever you are an independent director, please ask your companies that your induction as a committee member is also equally important. If I am a member of NRC committee, what I am expected to do? Suppose that I have to evaluate the performance, board evaluation is required. But do I have that experience how to evaluate the board? Who will educate me on that? I don't need an outsider who has to come and give me a training, but at least the company secretary should be able to explain to me that what exactly I'm supposed to do it. So people just circulate the papers and expect the other person to know everything. He's expected to read the paper and understand it. And this is not correct. A time has come that as a compliance officer, as a company secretary, if we have to get respected by the boards, we need to do something extra. What is that something extra? These are the things. Take initiative. Talk to the directors concerned. This is the board evaluation provided under the Companies Act. This is the purpose of that. At the same point of time, I also advocate that once in 3 years at least, get a third party evaluation also. Don't let the board doing that, year after year, the same questionnaire is there and the same, the percentile of scoring is there and all. It is all ridiculous. So once in a while, invite somebody, you do your evaluation, but get it evaluated further by another evaluator. If that scoring is different, let him explain that what are the gaps he observed. Because the third person who is sitting on the fence can always point out the gaps, if any. You yourself may not be able to identify. Sometimes, we might be seeing something happening in front of our eyes, but we still might not be able to analyze the importance or significance of that. Yes, yes.
Sudhakar, absolutely, you well said this point very clearly because as a company secretary when I was working earlier, that is, we had 5 manufacturing units in the 5 different places, including Jammu and Kashmir and Pondicherry and Calcutta and Jamshedpur, etc. We always had what you call a really well-defined induction program for the directors. As you rightly said, company secretary can do it. I did not take the company secretary because I know inside person what is this he is talking about it. So I engage the outside professional who are actually in the practice to come and actually put down the things to the directors in order one thing. And second thing, when you said about the business, coming to that, what I used to do is I used to organize a meeting, board meeting in each location differently. This time it is Jammu Kashmir, next time it is Pondicherry, third time it is Calcutta, fourth time it is Jamshedpur, like that. We used to travel 2 days before. We used to take the directors to the manufacturing plant. We used to actually take them. We used to explain the process with the help of the supply chain department to them because we were actually a chemical company. It was, open for the lot of safety, health, etc. and other thing and all. We were very much concerned about it, so that they understand what is the gravity of the safety requirement, which is very important in that company, etc. and all those things. This is what we have been actually doing it. When you actually said you have to take the initiative, yes, this is all of the things you can do it definitely. I can definitely supplement your view, which I did also at point of time, which I wanted to share with you. Yeah.
I will also add on to this. So as a part of the induction program for the directors that were recruited, that were appointed during my tenure in my 2 earlier assignments, we had a robust induction program for them. wherein, of course, they got to interact with senior people in the organization. And of course, we took them for 2 days to one of our manufacturing sites. At the time of appointment, we wanted to finish it within a period of 1 month so that the person gets to understand. And once a year, we used to have an offsite at one of our factory locations. So that's a good way to, induct your board members. And since we were talking about evaluation, I had attended one forum around 1.5 years ago, and there was a point that came up from a director, and that lady is a very esteemed board member in big corporates. And she mentioned during that interaction that when we do your board evaluation, we talk about other things. The CS evaluation should also happen as a part of that board evaluation. I heard it, but I didn't implement it. And since I have other esteemed panelists also with me, so I would like to take their thoughts on that.
Pragya, I always had a KRA actually specified as is spelled out in the beginning, every beginning of the year. One of the KRA, what I had was really, you'll be surprised to know, even before the secretarial standard was not there and even 2013 Act was not there. I am talking about 1956 Act. That time, one of the KRA for me was, I should release the agenda items in full to all the directors in 10 working days before.
Wow.
That used to be one of the things. And every after the board meeting, my managing director used to sit with me. What is the date you sent the agenda? Is everything has gone in full? What is that? And other thing and all. That used to be my performance indicator. He used to do. That is one thing. And second thing is that now this says, the draft board minutes can be circulated within 15 days and other things. We had another KRA for me. And that immediately after board meeting, within 5 working days, you will circulate the draft minutes. Because people tendency to forget, it should happen. So that was another thing which was actually there. And one more thing which was very thing is there, although we have a time limit of 30 days on complying with the various things, we said nothing doing. Within 15 days, all the board items, what are required to be compliant to be there. If there is any difficulty, we will discuss that separately. This used to be there and this used to be monitored regularly. Another thing, actually, you talked about the self-evaluation. In fact, I always had a self-evaluation. I know to actually make a self-evaluation of myself. And I know to present to my managing director. My managing director will go through. He will come back and discuss. If I have the problem on that, I have a higher authorities to refer. It will go to some of the other directors. That can be reviewed if I have anything. I was the managing director. We had a system like that actually. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much for this.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you so
Jasmine.
much. Yes. So regarding the board, the evaluation of the performance of individual directors, the certain points that have to be kept in mind as a part of the criteria for the evaluation is their qualification, experience, the knowledge that they bring to the board, and their ability to fulfill the function for which they have been appointed as a part of the board of directors. The ability to take initiative, like that was also highlighted by Sudhakar sir, that their ability to take initiative to understand their role as well as their role if they're appointed in certain committees as well. Availability and attendance during the board meetings and individual committee meetings if they are appointed to the committees, and commitment and contribution towards the company. Certain additional criteria for evaluation to be kept in mind in case of analysis of the performance of the independent directors is their independence as per the provisions of the Companies Act and LODR, as well as if the company has carved out specific provisions related to independence, whether they meet those criteria. Apart from that, the independence of their views and judgment, and if they have the ability and are given the freedom to highlight the points or even discourage certain decisions and speak up about the same. Additional criteria to be kept in mind while evaluating the performance of the chairperson of the company, the effectiveness of leadership and ability to store each meeting, their independence and impartiality related to views and commitment towards the company. Additionally, their ability to keep the shareholders' interest in mind while carrying out the dealings of the company. Uh, to give a comparison between the provisions of the Companies Act versus SEBI LODR relating to the NRC itself. So, Companies Act is applicable to listed companies as well as specific public companies that meet the criteria. However, the SEBI LODR is applicable only to listed companies. The Companies Act states that the chairperson can be any member except the chairperson of the company for the NRC committee. However, SEBI LODR regulation specifically provides that only an independent director can be the chairperson of the NRC committee. Relating to the criteria for quorum, we have to refer to the secretarial standards applicable in case of applicability under the Companies Act, whereas SEBI LODR very specifically highlights the requirement of the quorum with having at least one independent director present as a part of the quorum. We're now going to talk about a very important role in the current corporate governance criteria for the NRC, which is of succession planning. So, as the corporate governance has evolved over a period of time, and with the current corporate and regulatory scenario, succession planning has become one of the most important roles additionally to be played by the Nomination and the Remuneration Committee. NRC shall act as a steward of the company's long-term leadership pipeline, which includes drafting of a succession planning policy. NRC is not just responsible for the current talent and the current composition, but also to draft a criteria or certain pipeline policies to ensure succession and long-term effectiveness of the leadership in the company. So they are required to identify the talents for future purposes, talent assessment and development to ensure continuity of dynamic management in the company, and any kind of contingency planning to ensure smooth interim management in case of any unexpected vacancies on the board. Any input from the panelists on succession planning and the role of NRC in this
Yeah,
case?
see, as far as the succession planning is concerned, it is a confidential policy of the company. It need not be disseminated to the public or to the shareholders. It need not be put on the website of the company also. And it is not even mandatory, if I am not wrong. The only thing is that the NRC also have an obligation to ensure that succession plan is there in place. So, but definitely, whenever we talk about succession planning, normally we talk about the senior level only, like CEO or CFO, or maybe the executive directors, maybe even some extent to the company secretary. But it is not sufficient according to me. We have to have succession planning at all levels, at least up to the middle level. See, because what happens is when your subordinate is leaving, suppose, and if you don't have a proper successor who has to take over, then there will be a kind of setback in the organization. So at one point of time in Reliance, we used to have a succession planning when we were divided that. Virtually, you have to map every person with his second in command, so that tomorrow, in case of any kind of resignations or retirements or superannuations takes place, the second in command will be stepping into the shoes of that other person. So succession planning is a very important thing, and at the same point of time, because we know that Indian economy is predominantly driven by the promoters, Indian corporate sector. So whenever NRC is devising the succession plan, definitely the values of the family who is the holding the majority shareholding also need to be embedded to the succession planning. I mean the policy or the procedures, whatever they are making it out. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to certain case laws that
I think
highlight.
before you
Yes.
move to case law, why can't you, Bala, there are a lot of questions out there. Why can't you take up the questions?
Yeah, we can do that.
Hmm.
Let us start from the very beginning. Somebody asked, can we get the CP hours credit for this? I don't think it is, because it is not the CS organized program. It's totally conducted with the knowledge sharing. You will not get it for that. I already answered that also. Then, somebody is actually sharing the indigo, which we are not going to discuss because they are talking about this various passenger put into problem and etc. higher charges, hotel etc. and other thing and all.
Bala, before that CP hours, there was a question on that. Can NRC appoint a KFP, non-executive director and executive?
1 minute.
I think that was later on.
That is coming later on.
Ah.
That question is coming
No,
later
before
on.
that, some Nachiket's question is
Yes.
there. Before Chandan's question on can we get a CPA credit for this webinar? Before that, there is a question that can NRC appoint a KMP, non-executive director and executive director by passing a circular resolution?
Circular resolution.
Yeah, Pragya, you may comment about it subsequent to that. I will add to that.
Sure, sir. So it's specified that board cannot do it by circulation. There is no prohibition for NRC, but it is advisable that it goes through NRC in a proper board meeting so that the NRC can actually discuss the capabilities, the criteria, and then take it to the board.
Now, the whole idea, according to me, is unless you interact one-to-one and discuss and understand, then how
Absolutely.
will you take a decision? That is the whole point, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So
also,
law
I
doesn't
suggest,
prohibit, sir. So law doesn't say that. Law specifies for board that it cannot be done through circulation. There's nothing mentioned about NRC, but however, it's a critical thing. It's an important thing, as you also mentioned. So it should ideally be done in a NRC, but just to add internally, what happens is in the NRC appointment doesn't happen, right? NRC chairperson with audit committee or somebody meets the candidate in an informal meeting. They actually decide if they find it suitable, then only it's taken to the NRC. That's how it works in corporate circles.
Just further to that, I would like to add that NRC cannot appoint. Number one, they have to recommend only. Number two, that also please refer to Secretary Standard 1 whenever you have this kind of doubts about passing a resolution by circulation. Over and above the Companies Act, SS1 also has made certain decisions to be taken only at the board meeting or committee meetings. Because SS1, if you understand that carefully, whatever the provisions which have been applicable to the board meetings, they're equally applicable to the committees also. Okay. Rest you please go through the guidance so you will get the understanding of that.
Yeah, as you said, Sudhakar, I will also like to add one more thing here. The CS Institute has actually put their experts on the field. They have brought the very excellent guidance notes, which actually gives a lot of illustrations, practical life of the situation, etc., which amply clarify for the people. It is not only the secretarial standard, people have to actually go through the guidance note to take the better out of it and to do the things. I would say that actually. Sir, independent directors are not independent if we say we are actually kicked out of the papers and do not, even the papers do not come to the independent directors in time. That is one thing he's saying. In maximum company, independent directors are not independent. Yeah, that is what I also said initially in some of the companies. Unfortunately, yes, to some extent it is true. I seek the view of the other panelists.
So, as that gentleman has mentioned, many a times independent directors are actually not independent. They are friends of the promoters, relatives of the promoters. So the promoters also want these people as independent directors because they would be their people. They would do what they want, and at the same time, legally, they would be able to say that I have independent directors. It mostly happens in, I would say, closely held, although they may be public companies, although they may be listed, but promoter holding may be more. In those sort of organizations, it definitely happens.
See, all said and done, although we say there is a directed database, etc., people are to be recruited from there and all the same. By and large, if you look at it, nobody want to catch a person who is unknown to the company. Today, the director recruitment is actually happening from, word to mouth. You have known people sending the words, getting the people. That is exactly as happens. Once you actually decide, because the requirement is there, the director's appointment cannot be done unless he is actually listed in the database. Then the director is actually advised to get it in the database and it is listed. That is how it is actually in practically, by and large, most of the places it is actually working. So as you rightly said, in case of the promoter-driven company, yes, unfortunately, it is so. It is more so in case of the unlisted, closely held public companies. The reality is really such only. Yeah.
See, I don't agree with that sweeping statement, the independent directors are not independent and all those things. Because independence is a perception. So you cannot define independence as such. Only the framework has been framed in the both Companies Act as well as listing regulations. See, that question comes if you are going along with the promoter, that doesn't mean you are losing your independence. Independence question comes when this kind of crisis, when that Indigo crisis is there, or this kind of major crisis when it takes place, that is the acid test to the independence. Okay, just building a roadblock or creating a roadblock to the promoter is not independence. So independence is a big ticket item. We should not simply say that independent directors are not independent. That is a sweeping statement, which is not correct. With all due regards to the independent directors, maybe they have some kind of a compulsions. Maybe certain times they may be accommodating the promoters or the directors. This is what my view always is that. But at the same point of time, when it is inevitable for the independent director to take a position, he has to take it. If the promoter or the majority shareholder is influencing the person or pressurizing the person to compromise or to accommodate or take a decision which is wrong, and if that person get burdened with that, then yes, he is losing his independence. Otherwise, till such time, he might be acting as an independent director. I don't have any issue on that. But one thing definitely, this has preempted me that so we have not in the recent past have an independent, a webinar on the independent directors. Maybe in one of the future webinars, we will do an independent, a full-fledged webinar on the role of independent directors also.
Yeah, you're right, actually, because it is not that always he is going with the promoter. The decisions are always right. He can always go with it. But that is not the point. Point is, it is even my personal experience also in some of the companies. Yes, there are namesake people are there because law requires them. They are there. They are not really involved. They are not really participative. The things that is what it is concerning, especially in the unlisted, closely held public companies, actually, especially the group company, associate company, which is fulfilling the norms of the independent director.
See, one more minute. Let me add one more point, Bala. When we say that independent directors are not independent, you meant to say company secretaries are not professionals in these organizations? Do we mean to say that company secretaries are also compromising and dancing to the tunes of the promoter, doing wrong things? Please remember that if we say that independent directors are not independent in a company, that means the promoter is influencing the independent directors to do the things in his own way. That means even the company secretaries are also not professionals in their respective organizations. Think about this before we pass this kind of sweeping statements.
Appointment and the charge of the remuneration, including the annual increment to senior management personnel, is required recommendation of the NRC. Appointment and change in the remuneration, including annual increment of the senior management personnel, is required recommendation of a NRC is the question.
Yeah. Yes.
If an independent director is the chairperson of the board, can she be a chairperson of the NRC? I think this we discussed actually. A unlisted company which does not have a permanent chairperson, can such company elect a NRC chairman as a board chairman in the board meeting?
Unlisted company which does not have.
Yeah, correct. If there is no chairman for a permanent chairman for a company, then that means that company not having a chairman. They are electing chairman from meeting to meeting. Then anybody can be the member of the NRC. Then there is no issue on that.
No. He says he's already NRC chairman, but can the same person be also a board chairman? I think if I understand the question, that's what he says. That's what it says.
See,
Because
if
unlisted company.
he is an NRC chairman, if he is an NRC chairman and the company is not having a permanent chairman, So even then, there is no issue according to her.
Hmm.
There is
Because
no
that is
issue.
what the question says actually here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does this mean that that person will become board chairman only for one meeting? Next meeting, he will not be the chairman,
Yeah, that
right?
is true. Because in many
Mm.
companies that is happening. Because many companies, what
Yeah.
happens is when the non-executive directors are there, meeting to
Mm.
meeting, they elect the chairman. This meeting, you hold the chairperson. Like that, they
Right.
do it in some of the companies. That is there actually. Yeah. I
Right.
think probably in that context, he is asking. Maximum corporates take independent director only when it is known to the promoters or the owner by whatever the name it is called. It is the information he is giving actually. Is it mandatory for the NRC to select independent director from among the person listed in the independent director data bank? Conversely, it's mandatory for the independent director to be a member of the IDDB. If not, how is actually useful to have the IDDB? Do we need to do it at all? But a database requirement is a must according to the framework of the law, because the independent directors data bank is actually the must actually. That is true. It is not necessarily to pick up from the data bank only. As I said also, it is actually, we are seeing by and large it's all going on, mouth to word only it is happening, but he get listed in the data bank. That's what I also said. I can seek Pragya and Sudhagar's view on this.
Yeah, the name has to be there. However, people just don't pick up anybody from there. Jan- the good corporates actually hire external firms to find out candidate. They actually tell this is what we are looking at. And once finalized, these are the other things that they look at. Whether he has completed the course, whether he has that certificate, whether he is registered. So it's like that.
Yeah. Can NRC recommend the appointment of the KMP in the board by a circular resolution on board has to approve the appointment in a meeting only, but for NRC act is silent?
We discussed similar questions, sir, Sudhakar sir, just
Yeah,
now,
you are
right?
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
What if the few directors do not participate in the board evaluation process or don't have the duty filled on the side evaluation sheet?
So I can share my personal experience. Some of the directors are prompt. You give them timelines of generally 3 weeks to fill up. Then you follow up with them. And if need be, because NRC person anchors this with the chairman of the board. So NRC person also speaks to that person. And in all of my, I would say, last two major assignments, we ensure that everyone filled it up. We explained the importance of this to them. Means we have to rigorously follow up. That's all I can say. So I
So
did not face
Section
this challenge.
134, Section 134 and Schedule 4 has imposed a statutory obligation on the directors that they have to participate in the board evaluation process. And especially independent directors, they have to evaluate the performance of the chairman and other non-executive directors. So it is not at the whims and fancies of the directors that I will participate or I will not participate or I will boycott and all those things. So whoever is the compliance officer of the company, they have to remind that director concerned that they have a statutory obligation to participate in the board evaluation process. Whatever he may give the ranking to the other people, whether he want to give 100% score or a zero score, that is up to him. But he should participate definitely.
Yeah. So as compliance officer, it's our duty to educate them and remind them,
Correct.
follow up with them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yes, some of the
And
companies
second,
complain.
second thing is the compliance officer need not run after the directors and okay, or beg the directors that okay, please do this thing and all. He has to bring it to the notice of the chairman that this is a statutory obligation. I have to complete it within these timelines. So and so is not cooperating. Kindly issue necessary instructions. See, it
Exactly,
always
sir.
depends upon that how we as compliance officers maintain our position. That is very, very important.
Absolutely.
So sometimes they say कि सर मेरा कोई सुनता नहीं है मेरा कोई ये नहीं करता है मैं इतनी
No, that
दफा
doesn't
रिमाइंड
work.
करता हूँ why you have to remind him there is
Hmm.
no question of any reminders just put a mail and then copy to all the directors and the chairman that fellow will automatically he will do it so we need to know the ways and means of persuading a person also
And actually, each organization has a different culture also. Some people don't like regular follow-ups from the company secretary. Some people are okay with that. And if it doesn't work once or twice, maybe NRC chairperson can step in. And I've seen that helps.
Correct.
Some companies compliance officer and CS actually being direct reported to the board, NRC, and board conducts board evaluation.
Yeah, exactly. Correct.
Yeah. How can we do the succession planning for IDs?
So for something which comes all of a sudden, right? Cannot be planned, but however, in simple cases like your independent director's tenure is coming to an end, 5 years or 10 years, right? So before that, we know, right? And performance evaluation happens every year. So the company generally has a fair idea whether we would like to propose his candidature for further 5 years or not. And then basis that the search can start, NRC can start the search and close it by the closure by the ending period of that time. That's how I have worked in my organizations.
Soma Constar issue of the glaring example of the lack of
Yeah.
succession planning. Somebody put can we have the PPT for the download? We have been talking time again in this forum actually. PPT is actually not circulated or available. It is actually the disseminated recorded webinar is actually being disseminated. It will be available on the YouTube, which actually contains the PPT. You can access to that you can do that. Why do the proxy advisory firms actually prevent senior employees?
Just Bala, one more, just 1 minute, Bala. See that
Yeah.
the people who ask for the PPTs in every forum, I have seen this thing only. People always ask for, sir, please share the PPT. After that, just he will, once you give the PPT to him, he will put it in his folders only. That's it. He will never even look back that also because he will not be able to understand what is there. Jaswin, if she has prepared a PowerPoint presentation on NRC, she has not done anything other than that, bringing the final points of the law, whatever it is there in the rule book. That's it. So it is always depending upon, please listen to the persons, when the panelists or the presenter, whoever is making the presentation, that point of time, how they are articulating it. You can always go to the rule book and see the rules are concerned, whether it is listing regulations, whether it is Companies Act. What is important is that the persons, when they're articulating, they're giving certain clarity to the matter concerned. That is more important. PPT is not important at all. That's why actually we discourage that sharing the PPT with the participants. We are giving that recordings free of cost to you. Please go through that webinar, listen to that till the time you get that clarity of the matter.
Why do proxy advisory firms prevent senior ex-employees even after the statutory period has expired from being appointed as independent directors despite their valuable experience with the business?
This is not clear to me actually, because law says that law also specifies certain time period, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
Lock-in
but
period is
here,
there.
but here are they saying that proxy advisories tell that even after that statutory period has elapsed,
Yeah,
that
that is what
person
they are
cannot be
saying.
appointed.
That is what he is saying. Proxy advisory,
And even in
even
the
after
same
the
organization, are they saying
yeah.
in the same organization as IDs? Right?
Same organization. Same
Yeah,
organization.
same organization. Same organization.
See, what the proxy advisor is, if they say for example, if I'm a person worked with Reliance for 20 years, after the 3 years cooling off period, if I join as independent director in some of the Reliance Group companies, how independent I will be always is a question mark.
Absolutely.
So I said that from my side, I may say that, look, my past doesn't determine my future. But still, as far as the proxy advisories are concerned, they say by that unless until the person concerned establishes that they are not comfortable in recommending a person who was having a long association with the company, after 3 years is reappearing in the company as an independent director. And maybe governance point of view, I agree with the proxy advisories also. There should be a cooling off period of more than 3 years, maybe 5, 6 years, something like that and all.
Role of independent director, please do one session. Just now only Sudhakar sir said it actually. We will definitely take up this. What we should do consider here is that of the diversification of the shareholding population, more participation in the small ME shareholding, going for the lot directors will be more independent than what they are today. The whole ecosystem is actually changing. I don't know, it's somebody's view, I think. Can an NRC chairman be appointed as the chairman of the board? That we actually discussed here. A private limited company appointed additional director when there was no NRC. At the time of the regularization of the said additional director, company had a NRC. In such a case, do the regularization need to be NRC before board and shareholders? A
Yes.
private
Yeah.
company appointed additional directors, a director company at in such case, there will be NRC need to go NRC before board or share. Yes, NRC, then
Yeah.
it has to go through the NRC. That is
When
very
they
clear.
have NRC, they have to follow.
Yeah. Most of the senior management do a thorough evaluation of the person being taken for the as independent director, and after proper consult the senior executives. Okay. Kindly guide on step-by-step process for the board evaluation, considering the same in NRC and board meeting after that. See, I don't think there is any lay down system of the board evaluation is there. It is actually left to the company, but of course the guidelines which have been provided, which I actually discussed in this presentation as well, the company has to take a call, they have to do it. Nobody can give you the standalone checklist or something like that, etc. I think so. I think probably Pragya could add on this.
Yeah, so the law allows that the NRC could do it itself or go to external parties. So most of the companies don't want to go to external parties because they feel first is the cost factor and second is the secrecy, the inputs that come. But the positive point is, although sometimes people feel that if I give it to the internal people, right, board evaluation form, when I fill up, my company secretary will know, or XYZ will know that what I said about ABC. So there are both the things that exist here. So the best or the mode that I have adopted is generally we start our exercise in January month, wherein we align the first we align the NRC chairperson informally with the approach that we are going to follow. And then in January meeting, we actually circulate our approach along with the questionnaires for inputs from the directors, whether they want to add something, delete something, and we cover all the areas like peer evaluation, self-evaluation also, and what all we discussed in Jasween's presentation. Once we received inputs, if there are any, we circulate it to the board members. We give them a time. And then once sometimes we receive the inputs on time, otherwise we have to follow up, as we said ourselves, or we take help of directors or NRC chairperson. Then those inputs are consolidated, and then certain portion goes to the NRC chairperson, and then it gets discussed in the independent directors meeting, because there are certain things that only independent directors meeting has to discuss. Those points get discussed there. And then our board members also meet him informally first to go through the findings, and if there is any input on any one of the directors, right, that the chairman of the board one to one tells that person, this is working out, we can do this, right? So that's closed. And sometime in May or July, basis completion of the entire exercise, in the board meeting, we take a noting of that as per the law, this was to be done. And we explain in brief the process that has been followed. And then we also detail, not I won't say in detail, but we tell the board that there have been certain areas which have been identified, which we will have to work upon together. And those are noted in the board meeting, because these things are also to be reported in your corporate governance section in annual report. So this is one approach that we follow. However, there are some organizations, they do everything almost how we do, but in the board meeting, formal board meeting, they actually present the entire thing in detail, that these are the findings. For committees, we have found out this. For certain directors, this is this. So it depends from company to company, but most of the time, this is my experience that the board doesn't want that in the formal board meeting. This is a big 30-40 slides and take 1 hour of the board. So the company secretary has to also see how my management wants this item to go through, but we complete the entire exercise.
Yeah, as you rightly said, it is the company to company it differs. In fact, I remember way back in 2003 in UK, it was very popular in our parent company.
Yeah.
One of the time when I visited my parent company, I just inquired about this that time. Because it was very much prevalent there. So that time they were actually telling me that Institute of the UK Chartered Secretaries Institute, they were actually doing the evaluation for the directors. In fact, my parent company was taking a help of the institutes to
Okay.
get the evaluated. Then thereafter, they used to internally discuss and take it forward. That is the way they were actually doing it. In fact, they are also checking with me whether in India also your institute is doing such things, etc. And all the things. I said, no, it is not as on date. That's what I said actually. But anyway, we did not adopt what our parent company was doing. We adopted actually internally doing ourselves. That's what we have actually done. Yeah.
And it's very important that for this purpose, the management of the board has confidence on the company secretary team. Because many a times they feel that whether the company secretary will be able to keep this information with themselves. So it's a very important thing. Company secretaries have to actually establish their importance and also establish that they can safeguard the information, because as company secretaries we are privy to a lot of information and we also know what is to be disclosed and what is not to be disclosed.
Experienced corporate support functional professionals, CS, legal, HR, etc., are exponential as IDs. They cannot be expected to have a domain expertise as per with the experiences, functionaries, professional in such a factual situation. What are the criteria considered for the NRC for selection of the such a corporate support functional professional as IDs? Experience
Primarily, you
corporate.
have to have, Bala, the answer to this question is primarily you have to have a diversified board. Every board member brings his expertise along with him. Somebody might be having a legal background, somebody might be having accounts background, somebody might be having a domain expertise. So, like that, this is the culmination of the people, different backgrounds into the board. That's what we said exactly, that the company has to determine that what sort of skill sets it is required by their board of directors. And if you want a good symphony, you have to have different instruments and different players should be there who play those instruments. Same is the case with the board also. You cannot have the same skill sets of the people there. Then there is no point. There won't be any music. There will be a noise only. So you need to
Correct.
have different people. That's why suppose if I join a company as an independent director, I will bring finance and legal background. I may not be having domain expertise and I'm not expected to have that. But once I join the company, I should gain that knowledge, domain knowledge also to a reasonable extent, so that as a director, I will be able to contribute and I will be able to align my expertise with the expertise required by the organization concerned.
Absolutely correct, sir. Absolutely correct. I agree with you. How evaluation of the board and the independent directors are done? I think just only we discussed elaborately on this. I think that's all the questions I have. Nothing else
Yeah,
is there.
go
I
ahead,
think yes.
Jaswin.
Yeah. Jaswin, to you. Over to you, Jaswin.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. So now we're moving to the case studies and certain case laws which particularly highlight on the NRC front. So first is the case study of Tata versus Mistry. Like Sudhakar sir had highlighted in the beginning of the webinar, this itself is a very elaborate study in itself. However, here I am selectively taking the portion related to NRC for the purpose of discussion only. So the Act provides the NRC recommendations for appointment as well as removal based on the performance. So the NCLAT in their order had recorded that the NRC evaluation must serve as an evidence of the due process in the leadership, protecting the interest of the changes. So in any kind of removal or any other criteria, you have to make sure what performance review has the NRC given for the performance of the particular director. Certain orders.
One minute, just wait, please go back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See, in this Tata's case, the role of NRC is also very, what's called as, though considering the stature of the company, a lot of issues, a lot of questions have not been raised. But if you see the removal of Mr. Mistry is concerned, it is very surprising how the NRC and what grounds they have recommended his removal. I don't know really. The reason being, his removal is not an account of non-performance, and his removal is not on disciplinary grounds. 3 months before, in the board evaluation, he has got the extreme good score. As I know, that imperfect, a perfect score what he has received. What happened in 3 months' time that the NRC has to give a recommendation to the board, and ultimately the board done his removal. There might be some kind of a lack of understanding on the strategic issues or something like that. But it is always, in my mind personally, a question mark is there that whether NRC has fulfilled its responsibility in the removal of the CEO in that manner, wherein it also warranted the removal of an independent director also. Anyway, having said that, in the corporate history, these kind of things do happen. We have to take it. We are again the same thing. And okay, what we need to do is that whatever the orders are there, whether it is the FCLT or Supreme Court, whatever it is, we need to go through that minutely, and whatever the points of value addition, we need to take that, and rest we have to leave it to the time to take care of that. Yeah.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir. Thank you, sir. Now moving on to certain case laws and ROC orders in relation to constitution of NRC. So one of the case law is Unique Mercantile India Limited case. Herein, the chairperson of the NRC was the wife of the whole-time director. Though she was a director, but it was said that in the spirit, she's not a non-executive due to her pecuniary and other relationship with the company. In this case, there was the adjudication officer had penalized the company for violations under 178 on the composition norms. However, the company was later on absolved from the penalty since the provisions of 178 per se were not applicable on the company, and the same was also disclosed in their board report, stating that 178 is not applicable for us being a private company at the time of for which the adjudicating officer had issued the order.
So in this case, what has actually happened? The company got converted in the private limited company to the public limited company. When the public limited company, when they were scrutinizing it in one of the years, which is actually they came out, the show cause notice was issued on this ground, it was actually set. And ultimately, the company went and made the explanation and the statement. They replied very clearly that the year in which you are actually referring, the company was actually a private company. The NRC provisions were not applicable in the private company. That is number one. Number two, they said even though we were a private company, we actually set up the committee, and it is set up only for the internal purposes to strengthen our views in the company, etc., and other thing and all. And to that extent, we have very clearly disclosed in our board report. The NRC committee, which I actually termed here, is not applicable to the private company per se as such. But at the same time, this committee has been set up for the internal purposes, taking care of the company's things, etc., and other things in all the interest. And as said that provision of the NRC is not applicable being a private limited company, such a disclosure was actually given in their board report. So it was actually backdated about 3-4 years back before the company has become a public. So this was once explained, then yes, the company was actually absolved. The adjudication officer held that company is not in contravention of the section 178 of the Company Act. That is what this case has happened actually, for your information. Yeah.
See, two things I want to bring into the table as far as this case is concerned. Number one, that even if it is a private limited company, if you want to voluntarily constitute any committee, the regulator expects you to comply with the provisions of the act. So if you are not in a position to comply with the provisions of the Act, please don't constitute that committees or appoint that CFO, CS and all those people voluntarily also, if it is not mandated. If once you do that, you have to comply with number one. Number two, of course, the company got absorbed because it is private, public, whatever it is at all. But first and foremost thing, according to me, is that the presumption of the adjudicating officer itself is wrong. The chairperson of a NRC, who is a wife of a whole-time director, there is a conflict of interest, no doubt about it. But he cannot say that she was not a non-executive. She is a non-executive director. How can he say that she is not a non-executive director? There is a conflict of interest being a wife of a whole-time director. But she will not, if he presumes that, if his presumption is that she is a non-executive director, then means she is an executive director. If she is an executive director, then all the executive director related provisions will be applicable to her for whatever, wherever it is there. So that presumption itself is wrong also, and it can be always, you can contest that thing. If in case in the future, if for any of you, if it happens like that, based on the presumptions, you cannot take it, as far as law is concerned. That's why we always say that accustomed to act as per the instructions. In case of section 2, subsection 76, when we determine the related party transactions, there is a word, it says that accustomed to act as per the instructions of. That accustomed to act, you cannot make a presumption. You have to establish that. And the onus to establish that depends upon the regulator. The person who is alleging that you are accustomed to act as per the instructions. It was there at one point of time in 185 1E also, and accustomed to act as per the instructions. The holding company is presumed to act as per the instructions of the holding company, only one subsidiary. How can you presume that? So these are all the issues to be contested. Yeah.
Yeah, it was there in the 1956 Act. If you see director in the 1956 Act, it was actually open for interpretation to decide who is the director, although he was not appointed as a director. But some other, the section 2, subsequently which came defining the director in the 2013 Act, they brought the more clarity. A director means duly appointed by the board. So that means the director appointed by the board, form DR12 is filed, then only he is actually a director. That has been actually brought out, but what you said is maybe prevail only at the time of, what you call that situation called lifting of the corporate veil. When it goes into the detail, if something goes wrong and other thing and all, that might work. That's what I think. Yeah. Yes, just wait.
Yes. So the next was the ROC action against PTC India Financial Services Limited. In this case, there was a sudden resignation of all the independent directors due to corporate governance issues in the company, which led to the NRC itself becoming dysfunctional. In this case, the ROC charged a penalty of rupees 5 lakh on the company and 1 lakh rupees each on the MD and CEO. The unique feature of this, or the point highlighted in this case law, is there was a clear trail of the company secretary and the independent directors appointed later on who had raised this issue before the management of the non-compliance. Hence, they were not subject to penalty by the ROC in this case. The next case law is related to Muka Proteins Limited, wherein upon the conversion of the company from private to public, the company failed to constitute an NRC despite meeting the thresholds under the Companies Act. So in this case, the Registrar of Companies charged a fine of 5 lakh rupees on the company and 1 lakh rupees each on the MD and every director, as well as the present as well as the erstwhile company secretary of the company. The point to be highlighted here is upon the conversion of the company, if you're meeting the criteria, there's no specific time frame provided by law, which gives you the time to keep the NRC and constitute the NRC audit committee and meet the other requirements. Hence, while the conversion is happening, the company should plan accordingly so that these committees' requirement and constitution can be met, as well as the independent director appointment can be met as soon as the conversion happens. The next is a practical scenario of the dilemma faced by the Nomination and Remuneration Committee, which is of independence versus promoter influence, that we discussed very elaborately during the course of this webinar. The NRC is required, and the independent directors appointed thereto are required to have an independent and a very key performance based remuneration policies. However, in most of the companies, the conflict and the dilemma lies in the fact that remuneration is a concern where most of the promoter influence happens related to drafting of the remuneration policies. Hence, it's a constant dilemma for the NRC on how to balance it, and that's where the function of the committee itself becomes really important.
See, the primary role of NRC is that to attract the talent and to retain the talent. So whether it is the promoters, whims and fancies, or whoever it is, at least NRC should be able to tell the promoter that at the end of the day, whatever the remuneration policy they are devising it and recommending it to the board for its approval, it should be fair enough that to attract the talent and to retain the talent. Otherwise, what will happen? The promoter has to, bring his own people who are the sycophants to to run the organization. Okay.
There are two more questions which has actually come. How remuneration or sitting fees, etc., are fixed by the NRC or by the board? In fact, sitting fees actually governed by the circular saying that what should be the maximum limit. That is what it is there. And in fact, the board decides actually on the sitting fees. That's what I think so. But as per the remuneration concern, remuneration is actually recommended by the NRC. And then it is actually discussed at the board. That is what it is actually the remuneration concern. Because the NRC committee is not actually fixing any remuneration, etc. And I think it is only making a recommendation.
Right.
How to deal with the agenda of the payment of the commission to all the IDs, where the NRC is only constituted with those IDs, and they are actually interested in that particular agenda, whether the set items of the case directly placed before the board or before the NRC or interested in that particular case. Commission payment.
I would like to take this
Yeah.
up first.
Yeah.
Because this is an interesting question, and I faced that in my earlier assignment. The same sort of story happened. So what we used to do is, as a part of the agenda, this was a part of the agenda. However, when the matter came up in the discussion, the chairperson of the NRC used to say that since all of us are interested, we won't be discussing this and recommending it. You can directly take it to the board. And then the board used to take a decision on this.
See, not only that, NRC is not deciding anything. Only conflict of interest question comes when you are deciding something. In this case, what they are doing is they are only recommending it. And that's why what NRC has to do is they have to formulate a policy. And these kind of compensations, whether it is to executive directors or non-executive directors or to senior managerial personnel or others also, it has to go as per the remuneration policy. Question comes when you are deciding something individual to individual basis, the conflict of interest will be there. If you are making a policy decision, then this question of conflict of interest is not there. So in that remuneration policy, they have to also include the what's called the compensation as far as the independent directors are concerned. Maybe if at all they want to do it, they can give a carve out from the remuneration policy. Number one. Number two is that when they recommend that, when it go to the board, when the board is approving, whether the independent directors who are having an interest in that, can they participate in the voting? Obviously, answer is they having a conflict of interest. So they have to recuse themselves from the participating in that particular agenda item. The executive directors have to approve the compensation or remuneration, the commission and other things of concern of the independent directors. When the question of executive directors comes, the independent directors have to pass that resolution, and the executive directors have to recuse themselves from participating in that particular discussion.
Correct, sir. So what happens is every year, the commission point of each independent director will come, right? So instead of, so there are two ways to do it actually. either there are 4 independent directors, right? If my commission comes up, I will not speak, but the 3 independent directors will speak. Either it can be this way, right? And then you take it to the board. Or the entire committee says that since we all are interested, we would like to take this item directly to the board.
In fact, as Sudhakar puts it very clearly, I also remember in our company also we had that. But what we used to have is we actually had a policy. What will be the commission which will be decided actually, that is actually there. It used to be discussed NRC committee. NRC committee simply used to say that whatever the commissions are entitled will be as per the remuneration policy, which is actually recommended. That's what they used to say. But when it's come to the board, the interested people, they do not participate. It is actually approved by the executive director, as Sudhakar puts it very correctly. That is what it used to be there. I have seen it actually. Yeah.
Right.
There is another question which has come. ID was actually removed from the Bini Limited as per the filing of the BSc on 4th December. As NRC actually failed to find the ineligibility of the ID, Rajiv Bakshi, how can NRC function better to avoid similar situation in future?
Yeah, we don't have the facts and also we should not comment about that here.
If shareholders have already approved the commission by payment of the resolution at the time of the payment of the commission, does it require the approval of the board for payment? See, actually here there are two things, because the commission payment is subject to that 1% of the profitability limit. So the shareholder would have approved, the commission payment is actually approved up to that 1% of the limit they would have approved. But as Pragya put it, the commission might vary year to year, depending upon what is the profitability, what is the company wants to make the commissions to. To that extent, it will actually vary. You have the privacy approval for the payment of the commission, but the quantum of the commission is always discussed in this committee and board. That's what I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I think that is all the questions we have actually finished up with. And if anybody raises the hands, we can answer. There are appreciation has been put up for Sudhakar for your lot of expecting the authority in the subjects of sharing with us. That's what he's saying. So one more thing has come. If the company has only 3 members of the NRC, after which 1 director is resigned from the board, now the NRC left with only the 2 directors and the quorum is actually not completed, but the company has to appoint the director. So in that case, whether the NRC can be converted into only the 2 directors, even though the constitution is not in line with the act. How can it be? It is a non-compliance. It is a non-compliance. You are violating the Companies Act. Let me see, anybody has risen the hands. Yeah, there is 1 hand is risen, I think so. Who has risen the hand?
Saurabh Agrawal.
Saurabh Agarwal. Saurabh Agarwal, are you there? You can unmute, you can talk it to us. Saurabh, you are there? Even anybody wants to raise the hand, please do raise the hands so that you can unmute, you can talk to us. Yes, Saurabh, go ahead.
Yeah, hi sir. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I place the question that the NRC is with the 3 members, out of which the 1 member of the NRC has been resigned. Now the NRC is left only with the 2 directors. Because, as per the Companies Act, there is a time of 3 months to appoint a new director. And while appointing a new director, the agenda has to be moved from the NRC only. So my NRC is not completed because of the 2 directors. And I have to place the agenda for the appointment of new director before the NRC. So whether I can convene the meeting of the NRC, even though NRC is not constituted in line with the act.
You cannot, because the minimum constitution to have the NRC is 3 board members. So you have been given a time period of 3 months. So don't take any decisions during the 3 months unless until you constitute it. That is the maximum time limit given to you. If you want some decision to be taken immediately, appoint a new member and then go ahead. Without 3, you cannot even have an NRC meeting.
So the appointment of new director can directly place before the board.
Yes.
Or you can pick up a director from the board, an independent director from the board, and appoint him on the NRC.
Correct. That is another way of doing it.
That's a quicker way.
Yeah, if you are having an adequate independent director, pick up one of the independent director from the board and get inducted in the NRC committee. Then you take a decision.
Okay.
But only thing is, it will depends upon whether independent directors are there, or if the company is
Yes.
working with the minimum independent director, you have a problem. This cannot be done. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. I think I can see Nishiti. Nishiti Dharmani, yes, you can unmute. You can speak, please.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. But I have posted one query in chat. I think that has not been dealt with.
Yeah, what is that?
I'm asking that if shareholders have already approved the commission by passing the resolution, so at the time of paying commission to them, the actual payment, whether again board approval is required.
Yeah, in fact, I answered that question to you because what happens is commission payment is actually always subject to a limit of 1% of the profit. And the quantum is not approved by the shareholders. Shareholders approve, yes, commission payment is actually approved, subject to the limit of 1%. But depending
Yeah.
upon the year to year, the profitability actually vary. The quantum is actually decided how much commission is to be paid to the each of the director. So in which case, year to year, the approval is not given by the shareholder. Shareholder approval is there per se commission payment. But the quantum, how much is to be paid, that is actually evaluated, that is recommended by the NRC, then it goes to the board. So in such a case, the quantum is calls for the approval. That is why it has to go through the NRC and as well as the board. I hope I am clear.
Sir, in our case, the shareholder have already approved the quantum, that is the fixed amount.
But this is a variable commission or how it is? Because this must be linked to certain performance parameters also, right? So have
No,
they
we-
said commission of rupees itna or up to rupees?
Up to rupees this much.
So up to means there is a scope, right? And this is a variable commission, right? Depending on performance.
No, they have fixed that certain lakhs will be paid. Up to this much amount, the amount will be paid. And they have not mentioned anything on the basis of this turnover.
But that commission is linked to performance criteria because this is a variable thing. So what generally happens is even if there is a term used as up to, but every year when performance evaluation happens, then the CEO's performance also gets evaluated and it's seen that how much is his rating, whether he has achieved 90%, 80% of whatever was assigned to him, and basis whatever amount has been fixed, 150 crore or whatever, 80% or 90% of that gets approved in the board meeting and then it gets paid to that person.
Okay. Thank you.
As per section 178(2), evaluation to be carried out with the board of the NRC of the external agency. So if the evaluation is carried out only by the board, is it sufficient compliance?
So
That's fine.
NRC, Jasween, when you had shown your slide, it was NRC has to set the criteria, right? So the criteria has to be set by NRC and then it depends whosoever does it.
Correct. So they have to set the criteria. Later on, they can decide whether it has to be done by the board, NRC, or external.
Internally, board or
Yes.
externals, yeah.
That's correct,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Girish wants to ask. Yes, Girish, you can speak.
Yes, please, sir. Good noon.
Yes, go ahead.
Sir,
Yeah.
my question is not directly related to the today's subject, but I just wanted to know whether I should take interest in becoming a independent director in any of the board of the company. I am having a practice as chartered accountant since 1987. I played the role as a director of Asia's biggest membership cooperative bank for 18 years for 6 terms, and I was a member of the fee regulatory committee of the government of Gujarat for self-finance schools for 3 years. So this profile, does it fit for the role as an independent director in the board of any of the company?
Okay. So you have
We will
the
take up all these
independent
independent director-led questions only in the independent directors webinar when we organize it. That time we will discuss all these issues. This is NRC committee primer. Okay.
I am also having the same question. Like say, I am aspiring to be the ID, another candidate. Yeah.
Same answer.
Well, I think that's all. I think so. So I don't have anything else. No more hand raising. No more
Okay, thanks
questions
very much,
are
everyone.
there
Thank you.
actually.
Bye.
I think it's a time for us to close our webinar. I would definitely like to appreciate and first of all our presenter Jaswin bringing out the very precise at the same time putting the point from the company's point of view, the LODR point of view, bringing out things very illustratively. She explained very nicely. That is one thing, my great appreciation to Jaswin. My special thanks to
Thank you.
Pragya because she brought out a lot of practical things. She shared many useful things actually in today's webinar. We are able to see the interaction and etc. This was really good. As usual, Sudhagar, I will not say a separate thing for Sudhagar as a thank because he's always there, the expert opinions. He's always there actually. Thanks a lot to each and everybody. So let us meet in the next webinar in yet another committee. Thanks a lot once and all. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, everyone. As I mentioned, it has always been a pleasure to be here. And in fact, there are sections that we work on, but then we just work on those sections, right? The intricacies, because we go into practical mode. But these sort of forums, they refresh our knowledge. So it was a good opportunity. I think my Saturday was well utilized. Thanks to
Thank
all.
you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for being with us on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.